So please put any questions that you have into the chat. And remember, if it's on your mind, it'll most likely be on someone else's too. So we're going to address as many as we can, time permitting. If you'd like to correspond directly with Sarah, I will put her email into the chat. I'm very pleased to introduce you to our sponsors for this program, Debbie Katz and Joe Belisle from Lighthouse Program at Kids in Crisis, and Carol Ann Reed, Program Director of Bayahad, the LGBTQ Community Safe Space at Shoki Jewish Family Service of Fairfield County, a place where Judaism, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression can intersect to be embraced, affirmed, and celebrated. I have to say it's been a pleasure planning the program with such committed partners. And luckily for us, Debbie and Joe will also serve as our moderators tonight. Debbie Katz is a licensed clinical social worker and Director of Outreach and Community Services at Kids in Crisis, including as co-founder and advisor for Lighthouse, previously serving for well over 2 decades as the director of Stanford's AIDS programs and earlier as the coordinator for Stanford's school-based health centers. She's very committed to the Stanford community through her varied volunteer efforts, including her dedication to her many volunteer roles at the JCC. I can attest that Debbie is a volunteer extraordinaire for us. Joe Belisle is the coordinator and lead adult facilitator of the Kids in Crisis LGBTQ teen group, Lighthouse. He's coming up on his 9th year working with LGBTQ teens, and he says he learns something new from them every time they meet, which is a wonderful thing. Joe is also an author and illustrator and of a new children's book called What If Wilhelmina? The book is based on a true family story and will launch on March 2nd from Blair Publishing. He and his husband, David, 12-year-old daughter, Faith, and Wilhelmina, the cat, all live happily together in Old Greenwich. And they have been a longtime JCC family as well.
Right.
And LGBTQ and Jewish young adult fiction author, Sarah L. Young, originally from Syracuse, New York, is 22 years old and a 2020 graduate of Wellesley College. She has been writing novels since she was 15 years old, which is just unbelievable. The first of which is Nice Jewish Boys. She wrote this book as part of a national novel writing month. Devoted dog lover, Sarah is a first-year law student at the University of Buffalo. Also the author of Plus One, Sarah will preview her latest book, Happy Camper, due out later this year. Nice Jewish Boys, the story of Abishai Miller, a typical kid, except that his mother is dead. He barely speaks to his father, and he's secretly dating Noah, a male classmate at his Jewish private school. When their relationship is discovered, everything they know changes, and they struggle to find their way in a new and unwelcoming reality. Annie Poole of J Girls magazine wrote that Nice Jewish Boys is not only a love story fit for modern times, it reveals a deeper meaning around intersectionality and the struggles of growing up in a bigoted country. This story comes at a time where representation and inclusion matter. Sarah is a remarkable and accomplished writer, so please sit back and enjoy listening. And now,
I'm going to start. I have the first question for Sarah. So Debbie and I have prepared several questions. I just want to start by saying that we're very honored to be a part of this. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Nancy. It's our honor and pleasure to be here. And I just want to start out by saying, Sarah, this is an astounding work. I've read the book. I don't know how many people on here have read this book, but it's astounding. And you wrote this when you were 15 years old. So that just blows my head off. I think when I was 15, I was outside playing kick the can and tag or something. I certainly wasn't home writing, in-depth, wonderfully thought out novels. This is absolutely amazing. So I want to start out, can you summarize the story in your book? And maybe some people have read it, others are familiar with it. Can you just give us sort of a summary of the book, of your book?
Yeah. So Nice Jewish Boys, which I wrote in 2013, had to think about that for a minute, is the story of Avishai Miller, who is the only son of a conservative congressman from Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. And he is in their family is Orthodox Jewish, and he goes to an Orthodox Jewish day school. And he has known for a couple of years that he's gay because he's been dating a classmate. And unfortunately, they can't be out because of the school and their policies, and they're not really sure what their families will think. And so the book starts with one of them being outed and having to, they both have to deal with their families and with the public because Avishai's dad is a politician, and with their schools. And so it's sort of them figuring out how they can keep living the lives they've been living, but do it openly.
Okay, great. Deb, you're on mute.
Okay, so we have a question that has multiple parts to it. And I was going to ask you all the parts at once, but it may be complicated to remember them. So maybe I'll break them apart a little. So let me start with a few of them. What we want to know is, how does this book relate to your own lived experience? Were you raised in a similar type Orthodox Jewish household? And how did your schooling have any similarities to this Jewish private school? Let's start with those.
Okay, so I was raised conservative Jewish, so that it tends to be less observant than Orthodox Judaism. So while my family has always celebrated holidays and Shabbat and kept kosher and things like that, and we live Jewish values, I grew up knowing that my family was a little less strict about certain things. Like, I knew that it was never a question for me if my family was going to be accepting when I came out. I had lots of friends, well, my parents' friends, growing up who were gay or lesbian. And so I sort of had those role models. So I knew, I never questioned if my family would be okay with it. I did have some difficulty figuring out if my synagogue community would be okay with it and if my camp community would be okay with it. Ultimately, they were both incredible. My rabbi actually congratulated me when I came out when I was 14. His daughter told him she and I are best friends, and he was so excited for me and immediately asked if I had a Jewish girlfriend. As for school, I went to a public school, and it officially, it was very welcoming, but obviously, the students kind of make that up. And so some of them were not as welcoming, and would call me names or bully me, stupid things like that, spread rumors. But I ended up becoming president of the Gender and Sexuality Alliance. So I got a great group of friends together, and we worked on LGBTQ issues in the school. And our big triumph was that at the end of my senior year, we became the 18th school in the country to have gender neutral bathrooms.
So great. So in light of that, did you know boys who had the experiences of Avishai and Noah? And if not, what made you decide to write this story from this perspective?
So I absolutely did. I had friends and have friends from all over the Jewish spectrum. I have friends who grew up Orthodox and left the community. I have friends who grew up Hasidic and left the community, friends who are Orthodox and have always found themselves comfortable in their community and are happy there. Like I said, I have friends from all over the Jewish world who have found themselves in different situations depending not only on what type of Judaism they practice, but more on their family and their school. I made a lot of these friends through Keshet, which is a queer Jewish organization that I volunteered with and was a participant in their high school and teen Shabbaton every year. I attended that for 3 years and was a counselor for 2. And the kids that I met through there really helped inform my writing. And so, like I said, I've got friends who have come out and their communities are fine, friends who have come out and their communities are in denial or their families, and friends who are not out and never plan to be out because they don't think it's possible in their families, in their synagogues, whatever it is, their school. So this book represents a reality for a lot of kids of not being sure if it's safe to come out, or having trouble at school or at home, facing expulsion from school, facing becoming homeless if they come out or are outed to their parents.
Do you have any thoughts about readers who might read this book, who might get an impression that that a wider segment of the Jewish community might respond to all Jewish youth in the way that that was responded to Avishai and Noah in this book?
So Avishai and Noah, their parents react totally differently. And at the school, some of the teachers and some of their friends are happy and excited for them, and some of them are against them being out and don't feel comfortable with them at school anymore. So I hope it gives the impression that, you know, different people have their different opinions and will accept different things and are comfortable with different things regardless of their religion. You know, because for me, the Jewish community was a big support my whole life, but especially when I came out. And I tried to, in this book, and I tried to in all of my books, put some very accepting characters and some characters who, yeah, react the way, you know, you're worried they're going to react. But I make sure that all of my books have a happy ending, because that's really needed in queer teen literature. I noticed when I started reading these books that most books for and about queer young people end either in suicide or with a breakup or someone becoming homeless. And I thought it was important to show that that's not the only reality and that's not the only option.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
So what you just said, you touch on a lot of universal truths for a lot of kids in different religions, or so, and we have some questions about that. But I just want to ask up front now, like, was there a particular character in the book that you related to more than any of the others, or were there any of the characters that you had a difficult time relating to, like you had trouble writing that particular character?
Yeah, so I definitely had trouble writing Avishai's father, the congressman he's referred to throughout the book, because I wanted the readers to understand Avishai's trepidation about coming out and his dad has talked openly about not supporting the LGBTQ community or LGBTQ legislation. But, you know, I also wanted the reader to understand that Avishai is and was loved by his father, by his friends, by Noah, his classmates. So it was hard to strike the right balance. And I think at one point, my first editor actually wrote me an email before she put in her edits and said, "You can't make him a cartoon villain." And I was like, oh, probably a good point. I need to give him, you know, some good qualities so that we know that he is a good person and a good character overall, even when he's saying really terrible things.
You did a beautiful job with him.
Thank you.
Yeah, you struck a nice balance. It was great.
Thank you.
So the relationship between Avishai and Noah is unique in so many ways, especially for a young couple in high school. Tell us what you wanted to communicate to your readers through their relationship.
So I will say that when I wrote this book, I had never been in a real relationship, and I was just hoping one day I would, you know, end up being happy with someone. And so I really put that into the writing, and I included some things that I had read from other young adult books, specifically queer young adult books, about, you know, their relationship and how they felt about it, that no one could know, and how exposed they felt when they were outed. Sorry for spoilers. But it ended up being fairly consistent with my first real relationship when I was out and my girlfriend wasn't, and dealing with our synagogues and, you know, our friends. Some of them knew, some of them didn't. Some of our family knew, some of them didn't. And I was kind of surprised how accurate the book seemed after having lived through that and experienced that.
Cool, great, okay. So this is a little bit of a lengthy question, so give me a little bit. So at Lighthouse, a program of Kids in Crisis, we are a peer-to-peer social group for LGBTQ teens located in Stamford. We often hear that teens coming out to parents is the most emotionally perilous and vulnerable time for them. Parents often hear what is being shared by their child through their own lens, right? Whether it's culture, religion, their reputation, fear, stigma, so much goes into play here. Just like in your book, Noah's parents completely reject him, and Congressman Miller, Avishai's father, was afraid of his professional reputation, but he was able to put that aside for his son. What message were you trying to communicate to parents in your book?
I think what I was trying to communicate to parents is that this is still your kid. You know, your professional image, your standing in the community, it's not going to be affected by if your kid is gay or not, or if it is, you're in the wrong community. But, you know, you have to live with supporting or not supporting your child. That's on you as a parent. But your kid is going to be the same kid they always were, no matter who they love or who they are.
Thank you. One more. Do you have any advice for us as the leaders of Lighthouse on how we can help parents not fear judgment by family, friends, school, and society? And how do you let them know that they didn't do anything wrong in raising their child?
Yeah. So one thing that I've kind of seen going around recently is how to respond when someone comes out to you. And the number one thing that I've seen, and this is for any of you who have recently come out to me, I see some friends and family here. You know that what I'm going to do is say, thank you for trusting me with that. And I from there, usually tell them, I'm happy that you figured this out. How do you feel about this? Do you want to talk about this? Do you want to not talk about this? I think it's important for parents to not let their own opinions and fears dictate how they respond to their child, because coming out should be an exciting and happy thing. And if your parents, immediately start crying or something because they're afraid of how you're going to be treated, even if they still love you, I can't even imagine how terrifying that must be to be your child when that happens. And so I think it's important to start from a place of, this is exciting, this is great, we're happy for you. What do you want to do? Do you want to be out? Do you want us to tell family and friends for you? Because, it's going to be different for every kid and for every family. But it needs to start with a show of support, and not, jumping into your fears or, well, how do you know? Are you sure? That sort of conversation doesn't really get you anywhere. And if they feel comfortable, they will share that with you.
All right.
Thank you.
So you thought that Joe had a long question before? Well,
I didn't think it was too bad.
get ready for this one now. So both Joe and I work at an agency called Kids in Crisis, and we have the Lighthouse program, but Kids in Crisis has many programs. And one of the programs is a shelter, a respite shelter for children and teens that stay with us due to conflicts at home, homelessness, mental health issues, and other arising crises. We have had over the many decades that Kids in Crisis has been around, many LGBTQ teens who have stayed with us at Kids in Crisis, and they identify their own personal struggles with the time and energy of hiding who they are, just like Noah and Avishai did. They fear repercussions of what will happen if anyone finds out. It's exhausting for these LGBTQ teens not being accepted at home. They internalize feelings and sometimes act out in rash and odd ways. Some, but not all LGBTQ kids can be emotionally impacted from all the energy they put into hiding, which can impact their mental health and risk behaviors. What are your suggestions that could help LGBTQ teens deal with these struggles about sharing who they are?
So this might sound stupid, but my number one recommendation is surround yourself with people who love you and who care about you and who accept you for who you are. I know that that's not possible in every family, or even at every school, but thanks to the internet, actually, people have been able to find their communities online, even when they can't be surrounded by them in person. So find people who love you and care about you, know that theirs are the opinions that matter, and that every queer adult has gotten through their childhood and their teenage years, and they all made it out, and you're going to make it out too.
Awesome.
Can I say something?
Sure.
My picture's not showing. Besides the parents accepting or rejecting, what about aunts and uncles and cousins? I didn't read your book, but my niece called me last summer and said, I'll use a fake name. George is no longer George. He's now Sarah. And I thank God that I knew what to say to her. I said, I love George and I will love Sarah. And that was all I said. But I don't know if everybody knows what to say when they find out. And I think that's just as important, because you're not living just with your parents. You have a whole family. So could you respond to that?
Yeah, so I have several aunts and uncles in the audience tonight. I will say, I think the one who tops the list for responding the best was, well, it's a tie actually, two of my uncles. One of them, my aunt said while I was in the room, because I had just told her that I was gay, one of the aunts said to my uncle, hey, Sarah's gay. And he said, cool. and then kept playing video games with my brother. And another, okay, that uncle's not laughing. He might not remember it. And then another uncle, his son, who I obviously am cousins with and I'm friends with, told his family, and this uncle called me that night and said, "Sarah, you're too young to kiss anyone, but if you want to kiss girls, that's okay." And so I never questioned. Sorry, my cousin is doing a little dance right now. You know, I never questioned how they would respond to that. And the rest of my family, some of them who I, you know, was worried they might respond poorly to, I didn't tell them until I was already out to most of the other people, you know, and had started liking things on Facebook that were gay, pictures of gay couples, lots of rainbows, things like that. And one of my aunts actually said, hey, Robin, who's my mom, is Sarah gay? Because she's been posting some things on Facebook. And she's like, yeah, she is. Do you want to talk to her? She's like, if she wants to talk to me. You know, everyone is, sorry, my uncle's comment. You know, all families are going to be made of people with differing opinions, and who feel different levels of connection with you. Some people, their parents refuse to accept them, but their grandparents will take them in, or an aunt and uncle, something like that. Some people, you know, their parents are so happy for them and excited, and their grandparents never want to speak to them again. You know, it depends on every family. It depends on who makes up your family, but it's important that you find the support, or if you're the parent or aunt and uncle, that you be the support that your kids need, that your nephews, nieces, nibblings is the gender neutral term, you know, try to be what your family needs. And if you know that one of your nieces or nephews or children or something is gay or trans and is planning on coming out to the rest of the family, and you're concerned about someone's reaction, you know, maybe even say, hey, I know X cousin just told you that they're trans. I can answer your questions about it. Don't freak them out about this and make it seem like, you know, you don't accept them because you just don't know what's going on. So try to be there for your family. Try to be a resource when you can be. My uncle asked if the books were dedicated to anyone. This book, Nice Jewish Boys, is dedicated to, quote, all the beautiful queer Jews out there. You are important and you are loved. And the one that he was really asking about is +1. And that is because when I first found out that Nice Jewish Boys was being published, I was very excited and told my whole family. And my cousin Andrew said, can you dedicate it to me? So my second book, +1, I dedicated to Planned Parenthood and everyone who fights for reproductive rights, quote, dedicated also to my cousin Andrew because he asked me to dedicate a book to him one day. Yeah, that made him very happy. It's always his fun fact in Two Truths and a Lie, or say a fun fact about yourself, icebreakers. So yeah, kind of a goofy thing, but you know, make people happy when you can. And I do have probably the best and most accepting family. So, you know, it was never a question really if they were going to support me and even support my writing.
A supportive family makes everything easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at one point in your book, you write about the Rainbow School, which is a in your book is an LGBTQ friendly school. And I just want to thank you for pointing out that most of the students there are gay identifying boys and gender variant kids, right? You say that. Every child experiences some form or another of bullying at some point in their life. But feminine boys and kids who cross or challenge gender boundaries experience it more frequently and more harshly. To be tough in our society is a sign of strength. To be a feminine boy is still frowned upon in many cultures, including ours. Do you think for these kids to thrive, they need to be extraordinarily confident, self-actualized, and need a lot of support from home? Like, what do you...
Support from home, I'd say absolutely, but I think all kids need a lot of support from home. It can be daunting to hear that, you know, you're only going to make it as an openly gay or openly trans person in high school if you're confident and know who you are and know where you belong. But the truth is, there are people that don't know where they belong, and they also, you know, through who they surround themselves with, either teachers or friends or guidance counselors, you know, they find a way to make it through as well. I can personally attest to being one of those people who always knew who she was. I came out when I was 13, and almost immediately after, signed up for a pediatric cancer shave-a-thon. It was like a walk-a-thon without the blisters, they said. It was a charity that I did, and I raised money and then shaved my head. And so even when I was in new places or with new people who didn't know that I was gay, they assumed that I was gay correctly in my case. But it also led sometimes to being bullied. And I think even at my first United Synagogue Youth convention, which I was so excited for because my brother loved USY and my parents loved it, that's how they met. I stepped off the bus and hadn't even gotten my bearings yet when someone pointed to me and said to his friend, "I bet she's a dyke." And so that was horrible for me. And I was like, I'm confident, I know who I am, no one's gonna bug me. And then, you know, it happens anyway. So sometimes for self-preservation reasons, people don't come out young or try to suppress who they are, how they act, how they express themselves. I've always been of the opinion that you should do what is safest for you. It's easy to think that the more confident you are and the more out you are, you know, the less people are going to bother you about it, but it can also open yourself up to vulnerabilities. And at my school, I realized I was safe enough that I could do that and sort of protect sounds like a much nobler way than what I was actually doing. But I knew that if I, you know, got the questions from people who were uncomfortable around gay people or homophobic or transphobic, I knew if they asked me and got those questions out of the way, got their discomfort out of the way, you know, when they encounter people in their life who are important to them, or when, you know, my other friends would eventually come out, I didn't want them to have to go through what I had been going through. So I wanted to be sort of a test run, I guess, which is why it was so important for me to be out at camp, at USY, at school, at synagogue. You know, I wanted to be, if possible, not just a role model, but someone that people could figure out so they don't need to, you know, they don't need to ask uncomfortable questions or not know what to say when the next person comes out.
So Sarah, now you've attended Wellesley.
Wellesley College.
I know, Wellesley. You've been exposed to many new life experiences. If you were going to write this book at this time, would there be things that you would write differently? Or
Wow, that's a great question. I've never thought of that. I will say that in the writing that I'm doing now, I have taken what I've learned from other people, from stories that I've read or heard from friends, from other writers, experiences, new experiences that I've had or that, you know, my friends or family have had, and kind of the greater understanding that I have now, not only of what it's like to be a queer person or a Jewish person, but just a person in general who has lived their life up until this point. You know, I feel like I have a greater understanding of what goes into a book, what someone is looking for when they're reading a book or choosing a book, and what people need to see and read. So I can't talk about what I would do different if I were to start this book now, but in my newer books, I've tried to make my characters more complex, have real life backgrounds from people that I know or taking from my own experience, you know, and have them deal with day-to-day things and not just this big scary, oh my God, I have to come out, or oh my God, I can't come out. But having them, you know, have day-to-day issues like a math test that they're not prepared for, or they overslept and they're worried about how they look, or they have anxiety and they're in the middle of synagogue and they're having an anxiety attack, something like that, which is going on in the new book that I'm writing right
so
now.
tell us, give us a little treat about what
So that's
we're in store for now.
I actually wasn't sure if there would be time for a reading.
Well, I need to leave time for people to ask questions.
Yeah.
So let us just hear a little.
So the book that I'm working on now is well, I'm working on two books right now. One of them I'm writing, which is about a girl getting ready for her bat mitzvah, and she is figuring out how she relates to Judaism and how she relates to her family. And I'm not sure if there's going to be a queer component in that as well, or if I just want to keep it about her Jewish identity. And then right now I'm also working on editing. Kira is here, and Laura as well. They're my editors for Happy Camper, which hopefully will be out in 2021, not exactly sure. And that's based off of mine and a lot of my friends' experiences of being the first or the only openly gay person at their camp, going to Jewish camps and not really sure how open you can be, if it's against the rules, if kids are going to give you a hard time about that. So yeah, I wanted to go on to questions, and just if we have a minute at the end,
So
read a little bit from that.
okay, so we're going to turn it over to questions, but in case Joe and I don't get to say something, we do want to acknowledge that this has been a wonderful opportunity for us to share this evening with you. It was a beautiful story. We're so thrilled that we got to read it and be able to ask you questions this evening. And we wish you the best of luck as such a celebrated writer, really.
Thank you.
So,
And you have an open invitation to come to a Lighthouse meeting whenever. The kids would love to meet you. And we have many aspiring writers. So anytime, you just let me know whenever you want to come.
Thank you. I'm
okay.
looking forward to it.
Anybody who has questions, you can type questions and we can ask ask them of Sarah if you have questions for.
So I think I got the first question.
Yeah.
Devor Lowenstein asked, Sarah, what was one of the best books you read in 2020 thank you for understanding that there were so many best books that I read. I think my favorite one is Rebecca's Tent. Nope, sorry, The Red Tent. I can't remember who wrote it. If someone wants to look that up and type it in the chat, that would be fabulous. But it's about the sort of untold story of Dinah, who is Jacob from the Bible, his only daughter. And it's about her and her experiences growing up with her siblings, one of whom was Joseph, who would then go on to become I don't know how to explain what he was in Egypt, but he would end up eventually becoming one of the
Vizier.
yes, vizier. He would go on to become a big figure in Jewish history and in the history of the Jewish people. And her experiences, which are fictionalized, but somewhat historically based, of being the only daughter among 12 sons, and the work that she and her mother and the mother of the other children did, and sort of goes unacknowledged, not only in the Bible, but also in history. I thought that was a really wonderful book. Okay, I think there was a question
See the
from,
question from, we have a question from actually one of our Lighthouse kids. And she says, what would you like to say to queer kids growing up now? And do you have any advice for being queer in college?
so first of all, thank you for trusting us. Congratulations on being out and knowing who you are. As my rabbi said to me when I came out, that can take a lifetime to figure out who you are. And it's so exciting that you did at this age. Oh, love the little hearts. So my advice for going to college is, and being gay in college, choose a place where you know you can be out. If you are going to a school that has a policy saying we don't allow gay students here, or even has a history of being homophobic, either in their institution or the students there, that's going to be something you have to live with for the next 4 years or however long, you are at that college. I was very excited to go to Wellesley College, which is a historically women's college. There are a few other alums here. It is at this point about 55% gay and trans. So it's actually one of the gayest schools in America. Very proud of that. But if you can't go somewhere like there, or you don't want to be somewhere that's that gay, just choose somewhere where you think you're going to feel comfortable being yourself, and where you think you're going to be able to have a community. I think there was another question. Can you talk a little about your writing process? Do you workshop your drafts with fellow writers? So my writing process is, you're welcome, Ava. My writing process is very different than it was when I first wrote Nice Jewish Boys, Plus One, and Happy Camper. I wrote those all when I was in high school. And I did it as part of this competition called National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, where you're challenged to write 50,000 words, which is the length of a short novel, in a month, 30 days from November 1st to 30th. And as you know, if you have hung out with me in the month of November when I was in high school, it was a very stressful time. It is not necessarily a good plan for everybody to do that, or the key to success. Now that I'm older, I take let's say a calmer approach to my writing. whenever I think of a story, I write it down, usually on my laptop or my phone in my notes app. And I plan out a few plot points that I think might happen. And then when I have a chance to, I start fleshing it out, either, on my laptop or just in my head when I'm thinking about it. And I give myself more time now to write. I don't love writing for a deadline, but being part of a creative writing circle or a class, you do sometimes get that deadline. And so for those classes, I wouldn't say it inspired some of my better work, but I think it still made me a much better writer, to the point that now I won't submit anything to a publisher without other people reading my work. And back with Nice Jewish Boys, the first person to read it was an old babysitter, and then my mom. And those were the only two people who I would let read it before it went to the publisher, because I was so worried that it was just terrible and no one had told me yet and everyone would judge me. So I let that fear sort of get in the way of getting other people's opinions, and figuring out how to make this a better story. And so now I rely very heavily on my friends and on people who have helped me edit in both an official / professional capacity, and those who are doing this for fun or because they want this to be the best book it can be, or just want a free copy of one of my books, which is always valid. I work a lot with other authors and just other young people. Right now, 3 of my cousins are about to read the first chapter of a new book that I'm working on, because it's for their age group. So get excited, guys.
I can relate to that. When you put a new piece of work together and you want an opinion from someone else, and you're putting it in someone else's hands to judge you, it's hard. It's a hard thing.
Yeah.
For any creative process, yeah, it's hard to go be judged by others, right? Yeah. Here's another question.
There's another question.
Sarah, do you want to talk about your children's books that you've written, or your poetry?
Wow, it almost sounds like this person knows who I am and has read my work. That question is coming from my grandmother, one of them. They're both on here. And so I started writing novels when I was 15, and I wrote poetry very sparingly at first. I wrote one poem in the summer of 2015 called Expletive, the College Board, because I was very frustrated with applying for college. And then I wrote, almost a year later, a poem called I Am Enough, and those were my 2 first attempts at slam poetry, and I realized that I actually really liked it, and it helped me get out some of my energy, sometimes my anger. And so I started writing poetry when the mood hit, when I was having trouble, explaining things to someone. Even, just talking to my parents, if I couldn't explain what I was talking about, I would sit down, write a poem, and just send it to them, be like, okay, this is how I'm feeling about this. And so as the years went on, I started being inspired by the things around me to write. For a lot of people, that means nature poems. For me, it meant poems about what was going on politically and socially in America. My first poem that ended up being widely shared was actually, I wrote it the day of the Pittsburgh shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue. And it still is my most widely read poem. It was read at synagogues and memorials in several different countries, actually. And so at that point, I actually had a little bit of a following online from that, and people asked me to write more Jewish poetry because they liked what they had read, they connected to it. And so I started a year-long program where I decided to write a poem about the Torah reading that week, every week for a year. And so it's all available online on Facebook at Sarah L. Young Author. That's me. You'll see a cover that looks like this as the profile picture. And so you can read all of it there. I'm currently looking for a publisher for that. And I'm still writing poetry, when things inspire me. As for children's books, I have written a series of children's books about two women that adopt a dog and celebrate Shabbat as their new family. That's the first one. It's called Miriam's First Shabbat. And I've also written several more sequels to that: Miriam's First Rosh Hashanah, Miriam's First Sukkot, Miriam's First Passover. I can't remember which other ones I have. But I had found a publisher for those, and they ended up saying, you know what, we're not super prepared to go into kids publishing. So I'm looking for a new publisher for those as well. But I'm very excited to share them with you as soon as I find someone who wants to publish and someone who wants to illustrate them.
There's one more from Samuel Young. How much of your own life experiences and family experiences play into your writing?
Yeah, so I think a fair amount. I think all writers base some of their characters or some of their characters' experiences on things that have happened in their life, things that they've lived through, feelings that they've had. And I try to put a little bit of my experiences in all of my books and all of my characters even, because I want them to be relatable. I want to speak from a place of knowledge. So having characters that identify the same way I do or have experienced the same things that I have, I think lends a little bit of authenticity to them. As one of my writing professors said, I think the quote was something to the extent of, write what you know. So if you're a woman, Black, transgender, or a violin prodigy, only write those things. And the response to that was, yes, the four genders. But it's important to write about what you know, to not try to overextend and write, from the point of view of someone that you don't know about, have never experienced anything like their life, have never even talked to someone who's had that life. Partially because it's going to be, it might be, even offensive, but it's also going to be inauthentic. You haven't lived their life, you don't know their experiences. So that's a big part of why I write queer young adult, and specifically queer Jewish young adult books. So my experiences can inform the characters in the plot.
One more, last one right here. We just have a few more minutes. You wrote the original manuscript for Nice Jewish Boys in 2013, though the book wasn't published until 2019. Besides alluding to the fact that Trump was elected president, did you make any other major changes to the book after 2016?
I'm going to fact check Katie. It actually came out in 2017 when we were sophomores. I'm trying to think. I mean, other than getting better at writing and having to go back and be like, oh Lord, this is a terrible opening scene, and then having to rewrite the entire opening scene, which I think is something that most authors do, even if they've only been working on their book for a few months, a few years. So definitely that. I did have to, I don't think I mentioned Trump by name. That was a choice that I made. But I did want to reference the fact that the country was becoming more politically divided, more conservative, and overall a less welcoming place for minorities. So I felt it was important to include that. Yeah, I think that's the only non-writing related change that I had to make.
Okay. So we have reached our end. I don't know if you want to conclude by, I don't know if there's time to, you wanted to had wanted to read a passage, but
Yeah. First of all, parents, can you turn off your sound? Sorry. I'm actually going to read a little bit from the story that I'm working on now. The one I just started recently. I'm only a couple chapters in. Can you guys still see me when I'm on another screen? Yes.
we see you now. So if that's
Yep,
in the
we see
screen,
you.
we see you.
Okay, fabulous. My twisted ankle throbbed as I walked to the car in the cold February wind, snow blowing into my face. I held my costume in a plastic bag in my hand. A little bit of fabric peeked out, my beige apron. I stopped for a second to push it back in so it wouldn't get wet. My backpack was slung over my right shoulder, and I held onto the strap with that hand. It was heavy, and I was sore, and the week had worn me down. Thank God it's Friday. As I approached the car, I made eye contact with my mom. She stuck her tongue out at me, so I stuck my tongue out at her. Then I stuck out my thumb like a hitchhiker. "Which way you headed?" I asked as I opened the door to the back seat. I threw my backpack and costume in, slammed the door a little too hard, and took my place in the front seat. "Young lady," my mom said, taking a tone I knew all too well. Technically, I wasn't tall enough to sit in the front seat, but sometimes Dad let me do it. "Come on, Mom," I sighed. "I'm in 7th grade. I have my bat mitzvah coming up. I'm 1 inch away from the limit." She raised a single eyebrow at me, a trick I had yet to master. "Fine," I grumbled as I hopped into the back seat. I moved my backpack and costume to the other side and buckled myself. Then she started the car. "Music?" she asked. "Whatever you want," I said. "Actually, not show tunes." "You're missing out, kid." "I've heard enough to last a lifetime," I said. "If I have to listen to Fiddler for just 1 day more." "That's funny," she said dryly, but she didn't laugh. "It's good to sing in a group. I was listening to this piece from NPR on my way to work this morning, and they said that singing in a group can actually improve your mood. So, how's your mood?" "Okay," I asked more than said. "I'm fine." "Are you really?" That made me think for a minute. I wasn't, to tell the truth. I was tired and my ankle hurt and I was frustrated with math class and I couldn't think of anything to talk about for my bat mitzvah speech. On top of that, I regretted being in the musical. I felt so uncomfortable being the only Jewish kid in a production of Fiddler on the Roof. The director always asked me questions about pronunciation, holidays, and customs. I didn't know about all that. I hadn't even heard about separate dancing until we got to that scene, but she asked me to tell the whole cast about it. I was slightly mortified. "Yeah," I lied, saving myself the trouble. I didn't know if she could actually tell if I was upset or if she was just asking because that's what moms do, but she dropped it and started singing along to the Beatles song on the radio. Okay, I think that's about all we have time for. So just a little sneak peek at what's to come.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So I
Connie?
would just, this is Connie, and I just have to say, this was so wonderful, Sarah,
Thank you.
and I hope everybody enjoyed. Sarah has many family members and friends with us tonight, and I know you must be so proud of her, and justifiably, because she is amazing.
Thank
And
you.
I must thank her aunt Cheryl Young for introducing me to Sarah. And she was the catalyst for this happening, and I'm so glad that it did. So Sarah showed you her copy of Nice Jewish Boys. You can get that on Amazon. And
Yep.
I didn't know
Just
that.
look up Nice Jewish Boys. It helps if you put in my name.
Oh, okay, Sarah Young, right. And I didn't realize your poetry was there, so we'll have to, I'm sure a lot of people want to check that
Yeah,
out.
my poetry is online on Facebook, Sarah L. Young author. I think I'm the only one that comes up. Just make sure you don't look up Sarah Young author, because that is a totally different person. Another author who went to Wellesley College, ironically, but she's the author of such books as Jesus Calling and
Oh.
365-Day Devotional. So slightly different topics.
Right. Okay. And I also want to thank Debbie and Joe for their sensitive and insightful moderating.
Thank you so
And-
much, both of you.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank, again, Lighthouse and Bayahad from JFS for being sponsors, partners this evening. And I guess we have to talk to Joe about maybe a special sneak peek preview of his new book.
Yeah, and just before we log off, Laura Logan, who is one of my editors, reminded me Happy Camper is coming out from Ben Yehuda Press. Not exactly sure when, hopefully in 2021. Everything with quarantine got a bit off schedule, but I'm so excited for you guys to read that soon.
Wonderful. Okay, and please keep in touch with the JCC. We're Stanford JCC on Facebook. StanfordJCC.org is our website. And hopefully we'll be in touch and see each other again soon sometime. And good luck to everybody. Stay healthy, get your vaccines, take care.
Wash your hands, wear a
Thank you,
mask.
everybody.
Wash your
Thank
hands,
you,
yes.
Sarah.
Right.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Wait, is it just family on now?
I
So,
I think it's just
Family and
family.
Lisa,
Is
who is
Sarah,
family?
is Cheryl still on? Cheryl's right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Connie, meet my family.
What, Cheryl?
I said, Connie, meet my family.
I met your family. It's great.
Hi, Connie.
Hi. How are you? How's everybody? I heard there was some good news in the family, but I'm not going to be the person to say it.
Andrew, I bragged about you.
Yes.
Alice,
Andrew.
what's the good news, Andrew?
So I got into Harvard Law School this morning.
Whoa, fantastic. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Andrew. You won law school.
Sorry?
You won law school.
I think you're also the first young to get into Harvard, so mazel tov on that.
That's awesome.
As
Wonderful.
DeVore Lowenstein told me when I didn't get in for undergrad, we have a proud history in our family of not getting into Harvard.
On both sides.
What?
On both sides.
On all sides.
Very good. Well, that's wonderful. All right.
With
You're a wonderful family. Thank you so much for sharing Sarah with us tonight.
Thank you for doing
Thank you
this.
for
This is
hosting her.
wonderful.
Take care.
Connie, thank you very much.
You're very more than welcome. More than welcome. Take care.
Thank you, Connie.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.